Hey guys, Lexi here. So what happens when we say yes to the things that we've been trying to avoid? It's a scary thought. It really can be. I started doing this a few months ago, like really purposefully, intentionally saying yes to situations in my life, especially uncomfortable conversations with people, and some emotions that I haven't really fully wanted to look at and embrace. So I did this as kind of like a challenge for myself. What would happen if I said yes to those things that I wanted to avoid? For me, one of my experiences was I did this with my husband. I mean, we all have relationships. We're all as open and vulnerable as we choose to be. And for a lot of us, we're not completely open and vulnerable. There's always those little things that we prefer to keep secret, we prefer to avoid. A lot of times we don't want to have to compromise or have a conflict or be judged for our opinions, right? So I played this out with my husband a bit. I mean, we have a great relationship, we do communicate really well, but there were small things, small topics that I knew would trigger him a little bit that I had always kind of tried to avoid. They weren't super important. There wasn't anything like I absolutely had to talk about. Those I had already done. We've already faced some of those fears, right? The conversations that we really needed to have. But these were other small things where I just was feeling like, I'm really tired of avoiding and trying to not talk about certain things just because I'm afraid of being judged, or I'm afraid that my safety is at jeopardy, because really that's not true. Even if someone has a different opinion than you, even if somebody doesn't agree with you, you're still safe. Even if they get angry at you, you're still safe. And so there's a part of me that had nothing to do with my husband really, but that never always never, well, that's contradicting, but that never felt safe really truly being myself and being able to stand in my own light and my own opinion. So I decided to start saying yes to some of these situations that I'd always tried to avoid. And what happened was amazing, truly amazing. I wish I had done this sooner. I mean, I wasn't ready to do it sooner. I was still afraid, but I wish I had done it sooner, because it shifted the energy and it opened up to a new level of peace and awareness and presence within myself. So when a topic came up with my husband, for example, it was the topic of homeschooling our kids. In the past, I tried to avoid this topic because it was something that he was uncomfortable with. It was something that triggered him a bit. I'm not sure why. We never really had the conversation, but he would get a bit upset about it, and I would be afraid and uneasy and not sure what to say about it, even though I really wanted to homeschool our children. And so it's something we just kind of avoided until it came up recently. My daughter is 10 and she is very adamant that she is ready to be homeschooled. She wants to leave the school system. And it felt in my heart really right. It felt like freedom, the thought of having her home and doing a different kind of education. It was something that I felt really aligned with. But then the thought of bringing this conversation to my husband started to make me feel anxious, and I started to be like, oh man, I've been trying to avoid this all this time. Do I really want to go there? Do I really want to, have the possibility of an argument or something? But with, this new idea, just say yes to the things you're trying to avoid, because by avoiding them, we are never truly connecting, right? We're not connecting to our own power, and we're not connecting to the other people that we really want to be authentic with. So I walked up and told him, I was like, hey, hon, this is what, our daughter is bringing to us. This is what she wants to do. This is how I feel about it. And this is what I would really like to happen. And because I had shifted my energy around it, I had decided that it was okay to be vulnerable. I decided that it was okay for him to be upset or to be triggered. It shifted the energy, and totally different conversation than I had thought we were going to have. He was totally for it. He was totally like, you know what, you guys know what you want to do. I'm good with that. And he's like, there's just really not, there wasn't any tension around the topic like there had been in the past. And it was just really positive and it felt great. And so we left that conversation just feeling so empowered and so uplifted. And I was like, wow, I took a chance at being vulnerable and it wasn't as bad as I thought. It wasn't bad at all. So I started doing this in other situations too. Another situation where I used to avoid was actually opening myself up to neighbors in my community. It's something that I had always wanted to do and thought about, but it was something I was very uncomfortable with, like knocking on someone's door and inviting them over to tea, for example. Or, you know, when I knew a neighbor was needing help or struggling, I actually struggled with opening up and being there for them. So there was a situation in my neighborhood where a neighbor was going through something extremely traumatic and painful. Then I became aware of it, and I decided to say yes to the situations I had been avoiding for fear of rejection, for fear of judgment, all those reasons, you know, my whole life that I had not wanted to open up in this way to people, open my heart up this way. I decided to say yes, and I wrote them a letter and told them they could call if they needed any type of support, especially emotional support, because that's what I love to do, right? I really love to connect with people and be there for them when they're really having a hard time. And I did it, and I was afraid. Isn't that funny? I was afraid just leaving a letter at their door. But I went ahead and did it anyway because it felt better to be vulnerable and to say yes to that situation. And they called, and we've become really good friends. And, you know, it was really eye-opening for me when they told me that they had felt so isolated and that nobody else had offered to be that ear that listened to them, that person that could be there to just support them and just hug them while they were crying. And we were total strangers at first, and now we're good friends. And it was just opened my heart up to a whole nother level of vulnerability and love that I had not experienced because I had always protected myself a bit in that way. So saying yes to the things that you're trying to avoid in life, break your heart wide open. It will bring another level of awareness. It brings another level of peace and presence in your life, because once you're willing to be vulnerable, you're not really hiding behind that fear anymore. You are starting to have this belief. It cultivates this belief of safety in your life, that you are okay no matter what. Even if you find yourself in these uncomfortable situations, even if it's something that's not like a negative situation, but just something that makes you uncomfortable, being willing to say yes allows magic to happen. Being willing to be vulnerable always opens doors and allows magic to happen. We get so used to being stuck in our old ways, our old beliefs, and that old energy. And sometimes the only way to move forward is you get to that point where enough is enough. I want to feel the connection. I want to come home to myself. I want to find out about the depth of love that I am capable of giving and receiving. And that's what it came down to for me. It was time for me to really be able to shine my light, to see my light, to see myself as this divine being that is just here to bring harmony and balance and love and light and truth to this world. I had to be willing to say yes to those things I was trying to avoid. And I highly recommend everybody do this when you're comfortable, when it feels right to you. But give it a try, even if it's something small, like maybe it's just having a conversation with a friend about maybe something really personal to you that you felt you've always wanted to share but were afraid to because you didn't know how they would react, or you just didn't even know how to start the conversation. Say yes to it, even if you're shaking, even if you're sweating, even if it really makes you nervous. If it feels better to explore this, if it feels better to see what being vulnerable can do for you, give it a try. I promise you it'll open up doors and change your world in magical ways, but you'll only know that if you allow yourself to go there. Have a good day, guys.